Do you think music can still play a role in shaping how people respond to the world?
Absolutely. Ask Bad Bunny. Even if he's not saying something specifically with his lyrics, he's using this huge platform that he's been given to discuss issues that are really important to Americans and to more and more Americans as they're realizing what's happening. I'm not saying you have to go all in the way you would if you were sitting down having a face-to-face conversation. You can't. You can't utilize your time like that. But I think you can certainly have a few well-thought-out sentences to let people know what's going on and whatever it is you want to say. But saying shut up and sing has never really been what musicians or artists do from way on back.
Welcome to Music Makes Us. I'm Kathleen Hanna, lead singer of the bands Bikini Kill and Le Tigre. And now I'm also a podcast host. On this show, I'm going to sit down with the most exciting musicians on the planet, and I'm going to get to talk to them about all kinds of things like snacks, perfect lyrics, unforgettable shows they've seen, treasured artifacts, and more. Everyone always says their podcast is for you, the listener, and that's totally true. But this is also for me. I'm looking for community and finding it in my fellow artists. My guest today is one of the greatest rock musicians of all time, a performer who is the total embodiment of effortless, rebellious cool, Joan Jett. She first made her name as a teenager in the Runaways, and she solidified her bad reputation with her next band, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. Besides being a rock and roll Hall of Fame inductee and one of the smartest people I have ever met, she's also still touring and putting out music. But there's so much more to Joan than that, as I hope you'll hear. Don't go anywhere. Talking to Joan Jett for this episode is particularly special and close to my heart. Joan Jett showed up for me at a really hard time in the 90s when my band Bikini Kill was getting all the wrong kinds of attention, and I was starting to think man-hater was my middle name. But one day in 1994, Joan Jett called me out of the blue after one of my bandmates gave her a cassette tape of our band backstage at a Fugazi show. Turns out she really liked our songs, and she took the extra step most people don't and decided to pick up the phone and call and tell me, I like your songs. I, of course, thought it was a friend pranking me because how could the Joanest of Jets be calling me? But it was, in fact, Joan. Once we met, I never had to explain the perils I was facing as a feminist musician because she already knew. So instead, I was finally able to be my normal, goofy self. And through her support, I found the strength to keep going as a musician when I really, really wanted to give up. When she produced a handful of songs for my band, Bikini Kill, including Rebel Girl, New Radio, and Demi Rep, she showed me that the recording process could actually be fun instead of a full-on stressful drag of insecurity. And in the process, she got me obsessed with the art of recording, which led me to learn how to engineer and produce my own music. In the time since then, Joan has been around the world and back a zillion times, and I've been off on my own adventures. But it's so much easier for me to move through this world knowing Joan Jett is out there doing her thing, and that the two of us are always going to be there for each other. She's someone I really could talk to forever. So I hope the conversation that follows will give you a tiny glimpse into the fascinating and complex person that is Joan Jett. So let's get started. I was actually thinking a lot in preparation for this interview of how the Runaways were basically the soundtrack to the beginning of Riot Girl, along with like some X-Ray Spex songs. And I know that at the time the Runaways were active, you were really derided and treated like crap by a lot of other musicians, audience people, critics. And I'm wondering if the Runaways finally kind of history catching up to you and people acknowledging you all were musical innovators.
It's funny.
Like, does that feel good? Is it healing at all?
Oh, it feels great. And of course, you want to get mad and say, well, where were you then? But it's like I really realize now, the older I get, that everything happens in its time. It makes me very happy that people speak about the Runaways the way they do. And God, you'd think if we were as popular as people make it sound, that we would have had a lot of hit records or been a bigger draw, I guess, than we wound up being. But I was very serious about it. I don't even know if we thought into the future how far it would go.
You were playing stadiums with the Runaways and you were 16. That's absolutely wild to me. And going to Japan. And then by the time you were 23, you had a huge hit record, like a Thriller style hit record where it was like almost every song was just a huge, huge deal. It's almost like you're a rock and roll child star, you know? And like, did you feel like you missed anything as a teenager or a young adult by like
Oh,
being in
yeah.
that world so soon?
Yeah, I think, it's a sacrifice, I think, that people make when they take a lot of different jobs. Just there's things that take you away from regular life. And yeah, I think I missed a lot of stuff and probably am somewhat dysfunctional because of not having that sort of, hangout weekend with your friends. I mean, I did a bit of that in the Runaways, but it wasn't really like your friends that you grow up with in school. So yeah, I missed things, but I don't even know exactly what I missed. So
Yeah, because you just had a different lifestyle. You were hanging out with like Billy Idol before Generation X started. You were hanging out with like the Sex Pistols and Gay Advert and all of these like people who totally have shaped music. And a lot of what I've been talking about in the podcast, and you know this about me, that like just what does it mean to be in a musical community and how do we influence each other and without even knowing it. One person I know you've talked about a lot is Susie Quattro. And I'd love to hear anything. I just want to talk to you about Susie Quattro.
yeah, before even the Runaways started, and I was going to this club, Rodney's English Disco, which is discotheque for teenagers. It's like if you were over 21, you're already too old. And when I think of it now, it's kind of gross, especially in the context of what's happening in our country. But anyway, it was a place where teenagers and young people went to dance and listen to British glitter music, songs that American kids didn't really hear, which is a lot of Bowie, a lot of T-Rex, but the bands like The Sweet or Slade or, God, a million one-hit wonders. That sound was very big in these discos. And they played Suzi Quatro. So she was obviously unique because she was the only girl that I saw there, and she was playing an instrument, and she was singing rock and roll. And this is what I wanted to do. So I'm like, well, she's doing this with a band of guys and having success in England. So if she can do it, I can do it. It was really, just you see it and then you can do it. Even though I'd thought about doing it, being in a band and all that before, seeing it actualized and real, something I could buy, a record I could buy, it was very inspiring.
So you grew up in Maryland a little
Yes.
bit, and I grew up
Yes.
in Maryland. Rockville and like North Chevy Chase, where I lived, is like right next door. But I know that even though you were in Maryland for a lot, you moved around. And I'm wondering if that made you really comfortable being on the road.
I don't know. I guess maybe it couldn't have hurt, but I would always read the maps and just be aware of the routes we were taking. So I was interested in geography, topography, how the land changes. So, I mean, if I hadn't been a musician, I could have been a million other things, like a forest ranger or a scientist. But, it just shows that I wasn't one note. There were many things I wanted to be before I just wound up where the timing just worked, and it wasn't a phase. It became something actually I could do and create and make real.
Your parents were really supportive of you, which I just always love thinking about that.
Yeah.
And as a parent myself, of course, I start wondering, like, do you remember any ways that they supported you? Like any specifics or like,
Oh, absolutely. They, first of all, told me at a very young age that I could be anything I wanted to be in life. And I definitely believed them. So I went through a whole range of things. I was the first child, the oldest. And I think my parents indulged me by getting me a lot of the things that I wanted. Like I wanted a horse when we lived in Maryland. They actually got me a horse. I had to work on the farm and shovel the stalls and reshoe the horses. So I learned things as well as being able to board my horse out there. Then I had to sell her back to the farm when we moved to California. And she was just getting old enough to put a saddle on. So, you know, things like that are heartbreaking to a kid.
what was your horse's name, Joan?
Domino. It's like the Domino Sugar was the first thing I saw, Domino Sugar or something. But I'd go to the field and I'd yell. She'd be out in the field with all the horses, and I'd yell, Domino! And she'd come charging up. It was so cute. But my voice was much higher. I'm like, Domino! Let me slip in one more thing about my parents. They're the ones, and I said, I want to play electric guitar. I want to play rock and roll. I mean, they could hear me playing records and, whatever it was I was listening to, because it was a variety of like Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, T-Rex, David Bowie. But they bought me a guitar for Christmas, a Sears, one of those Sears Silvertones. It came with its own little amp and everything. So yeah, they supported me and in that way. And my mom would drive me to rehearsals, would take us to gigs, or pick us up places. And so she was supportive. And I found out years later, after the fact, that my father would come to shows, runaway shows, because I thought that he hated the whole thing. And maybe he did, but learned to love it because that was his daughter. But he was in the back of the clubs, a lot of clubs, and saw the runaway shows. And I never really got to talk to him about it. But I know he was there.
Wow.
So that's like
really amazing.
Cool stuff,
Yeah. It takes away some of the sting about kind of way weird little known fact that I read about you preparing for the interview about how like when you all played with Rush, they like stood on the side of the stage and laughed at you. And the thing that you said in the interview was you were like, if I was in Rush, I wouldn't have laughed at me.
Right. But I got to straighten the story out.
Yeah.
Okay?
Do it.
Because that story traveled around and it traveled back to Rush. And Geddy Lee and the guys in there are like, we didn't laugh at you. That wasn't us. That was the crew. It was their crew and it wasn't them. And I believe them. So they said, why would you be on the bill if we didn't want you to play? So, it's like sometimes you get so defensive that you jump to the wrong conclusions. You might be right in a wider sense, but some of the details can be off. So I like to straighten it out when I can. That it wasn't them.
It's so cool because it's like you spoke up and you said something and then you got a response back and it's like, okay, we worked it out.
Definitely.
I do feel like one of the things about sexism is that it does kind of put you on the defensive. And then the one time when you make the mistake, and you know what I mean? Like I'll assume that something's sexist when it's really just like, oh, I'm in a young band and I'm getting treated like crap like everybody else in a young band.
Right.
And I think that's part of the damage it does to us. It's like, how much time and energy do we spend being like, was that sexism? I kind of have just come to the point of where I'm like, I don't care what it was. I just didn't like it.
Yeah, it is. It is a waste. It is a waste of time and to spend your time on that kind of energy. And I think the only good reason to talk about it is so other women or really anybody that's experiencing those kinds of things can recognize it, that they're not alone. But in a lot of things, it's just life, man. Life happens and you're there, and that you're the one that's getting the shit this time. I'm trying to take it away from the me, and make it more about the whole.
Yeah, which especially in the really heavy and horrible political situation that we're in right now.
Oh, God.
I think a lot of us are gaining a lot of perspective about how unimportant we really are in the scheme of things, but also how important we are in terms of like figuring stuff out together and doing things in real life off the internet. And,
That's what it's going to come to, is that people will have to be face to face again for many
well, don't
reasons.
you think that's part of, I mean, you've been touring a lot lately. And one of the things that I found being on tour in sort of like this time period versus in the 90s is that, I mean, now more than ever, I really feel that. It's like people need places to physically gather, and shows are the perfect place to do that. And you said something in your Rock and Roll Hall of Fame acceptance speech that was like, wait, I'm looking for it. Rock and roll is an idea and an ideal. Sometimes because we love the music and we make the music, we forget the political impact it has around the world. And I'm wondering, when you look at what's happening in our country right now, do you think music can still play a role in shaping how people respond to the world?
Absolutely. Ask Bad Bunny, you know? I mean, even if he's not saying something specifically with his lyrics, he's using this huge platform that he's been given to discuss issues that are really important to Americans and to more and more Americans as they're realizing what's happening and around the world. We just got back from New Zealand, and everybody was asking us, what's going on in your country? So everybody is interested, and I believe that you kind of, as a person with some kind of platform where you can speak to people, I'm not saying you have to go all in the way you would if you were sitting down having a face-to-face conversation. You can't. You can't utilize your time like that. But I think you can certainly have a few well-thought-out sentences to let people know what's going on and whatever it is you want to say. But saying shut up and sing has never really been what musicians or artists do. From way on back, when people talk to me about other songs, that touch them, whether it was really bad times the music got them through or really good times, it shows that the music really connects and fills an important space, if you allow it, in people's capacity to deal with all this stuff that we're dealing with. I don't know that our brains are meant to deal with so much input, which is probably part of the intent, that you can't think about all this stuff, so you're just going to turn away and, let somebody else deal with it.
Yeah.
And I get that impulse too, I do. But I also don't feel that I can do that.
You've never been somebody who's been able to do that. I mean, just I've known you for a while now. I mean, since the 90s, that's a while. And I think very few people know this about you, that you're very, very smart and know a lot about politics. And when people think like Joan Jett and they think like,
Ooga
booga 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 rock star. Yeah. Like you're like from the Flintstones or something. And like you actually show up and you're like, okay. So the thing is these three key senators and what people aren't understanding, like you would always be telling me these things and I'm like, nobody would believe me if I told them.
I remember
how politically intelligent you are and how always on the ball you've been about this stuff. And I also really admire the fact that it's like you can have really progressive politics and still play for the troops. Like I understand that speaking out and speaking your mind is patriotic. And I also understand that supporting people who have oftentimes been forced into the military through economic things or trying to escape bad family situations, those are our people.
I was almost one of those people. I didn't have anything to do. I was scared. I was like, what the hell am I going to do? And I thought seriously about joining the military for a couple of weeks, and then I met Kenny.
Kenny Laguna is Joan's longtime collaborator and manager. I guess Carrie Ann, his daughter, is managing you now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't necessary, but it always made me realize all the people in there joined for a million different reasons. The military is regular people.
Yeah. I was just thinking of how many different places you've performed in your life. Like, I'm sure you've played on a ferry boat and a basement punk club and someone's house and on a USO tour and at a stadium. Like, you've played such a huge variety of venues and you've been playing since the 70s. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the different yous that you've met on tour, the different yous you've met on stage. Have there been like seasons for you where there's times where you most needed your armor, your Joan Jett makeup, the leather pantsuit, the armor? And then were there times where you felt like you let that down a little?
Yeah, there were definitely times in the Runaways. A lot of the shit we took did come a little bit in the States, for sure. Either people were uninterested or they were very interested at just yelling things or throwing things, which is like, you go, man, don't you have something better to do?
Yeah.
So there were times that I felt I needed that armor, for sure. We had a gig that was a misunderstanding, and I should have had the armor, but I needed it. We did a festival with the Scorpions in Spain, and there was a band that was an opener that went on before us. They had a female lead singer, and everything was fine. We did a couple gigs, great. And this next show we do, and they didn't play, but I didn't realize that. So we go on stage, and all of a sudden, the whole audience, all guys, get right up front. They start snorting and working up spit, and they all loogied on me, continuously showering me with loogies. I was dripping in loogies, and I had no idea why. I thought, wow, man, that's an audience change from the night before. I didn't know. I chalked it up to a metal crowd, guys just, really hating us. I find out, it was so gross, Kathleen. You can't imagine. I was
feel like I'm living inside like a bad acid trip right now, but continue.
I said, there's no way I'm leaving this fucking stage early. You're not getting me off this stage. But after the show, I went backstage and I was bawling. I was like, why? I don't get this, man. If you don't like the music, just walk away. Why such the violent reaction, And I'm sure they were throwing things too, but the spitting was really disgusting. Hanging off my hair and my guitar and just, thick and gross. So I'd say, God, it's got to be 10 years ago now. Time passes so fast. We played another festival in Spain, and I met some guys backstage, and they were in one of the opening bands on this festival, one of the bands that played this festival, and they said, do you remember that show with the Scorpions you did? And I said, yes. And he described the spitting. He said, I was in the audience that day, and I want to tell you what happened. The Scorpions blew off the opening act and told them it was me who didn't want two girls on the bill. And it was a Spanish band, too. And the reason they threw the band off the bill was because the Scorpions wanted to go golfing or to a soccer match or something that afternoon. So whatever they needed that time, whatever happened, but they went to do some extracurriculars, threw the opening local Spanish band off the bill and blamed me, knowing probably I didn't speak Spanish or have someone with me that was going to tell me what happened. And, so I find this out 10, 15 years after the fact. And, I felt a lot better about it.
Yeah, it wasn't just straight up
reason.
sexism. It was just this really
Totally.
complicated sexism.
And I think everybody really felt bad.
They wouldn't have done it if it was a male band. They
Right,
wouldn't have done
right,
that to
right.
you. Come on. I mean, and also
No, you're right. You're right.
the male band wouldn't have felt like, oh, we can get away with blaming it on her. And they're using the trope of, radio at that time and still sometimes doesn't play two female singers in a row.
Oh, yeah,
They don't,
totally.
and they don't want to.
Nothing's changed, Kathleen, on that level. All
Yeah.
these years later, from the Runaways to Bikini Kill to, La Tigra and all your other bands you've done. I mean, do you see a change?
I mean, yes and no, but I also see things going backwards. And I also see people being like, maybe unconsciously, and including me, I'm not at all like, talking about other people. I get to a state where I'm like, well, that's how it is, so I'm just going to play the game.
Yeah, it's like pick and choose your battles, right?
Yeah.
There's so many battles to have that you can't fight every one 100%. It's just, there's not enough of you to do it. And it's, and I think, yeah, you're right. Things have changed, that there are more women around and they have more access to getting things out. But I think until the women are the bosses of everything or deciding where the money goes, you're not going to see more structural changes. I'm hopeful that it would happen if women were in charge, but
yeah, and it's got to be radical women who get in
not
power, because if not, it's just going to be the same bullshit capitalist system with a different face on it. Oh, speaking of capitalism, I don't think a lot of people know the story of I Love Rock and Roll, of the record, and about how many record labels you went to. I'm sure you are fucking so sick of telling this story. But honestly, I tell it to people all the time because they don't know. And if you wouldn't mind indulging me and just talking about how that record came to be.
basically the record that we had, I Love Rock and Roll, was a lot of the songs we were doing live at the time. And we shopped it to all the major labels, some of which have folded now, but all the big ones that you can think of, and all the small labels too. And the weird thing was, I believe most of the Runaways all got record deals after the band broke up, but I didn't, which I guess was fine. So Kenny and I make this record, and we have the Black Hearts, and we're touring, and we sent the record to 23 labels, and we got 23 rejection letters that all said, you need a song search, maybe she should lose the guitar, we're not interested. And I get it. If they're not interested, they're not interested. But giving me all these excuses was really suspicious. And the songs on it were I Love Rock and Roll, Crimson and Clover, Do You Want to Touch Me, Bad Reputation. But then we got those rejection letters. No songs here, lose the guitar.
I'm sorry. There's no songs here. Bad Reputation. There's no songs here. I Love Rock and Roll. There's no songs here.
But this is this is pre.
How does somebody listen to that and think there's no songs here?
That's what you think, is like, well, either they don't listen to what the tapes people send them, or they can't hear hits. It's one or the other, or they just don't listen at all. So, I mean, I could see them missing one hit, but you got like all those songs were hits.
They were all hits. They were all hits.
So that tells you that they don't listen. But one guy, Neil Bogart, who was a Boardwalk Records, Casablanca, and he gave us a distribution deal so we could put our record out on Boardwalk, but it was our label, just they were distributing. So Neil Bogart, rest his soul, was so excited that I Love Rock and Roll's a hit, and he died the week it was going to #1, so we never got to see it actually hit #1, but it was a good relationship, one of the few corporate relationships that was wonderful like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think at a time when you've experienced so much rejection, and especially when it's just so, those songs are unfucking deniable, like absolutely undeniable. And so for people to hear them and reject them is like misogyny, or
100%.
like, well, I can't do that. None, you know what I mean? Like, fuck that woman. I don't want to hear her do something that I couldn't even touch. But I'm glad that Neil distributed you, but you guys were like selling them out of your car at shows.
That's true. I mean, so then we sold the records out of the trunk of the car. And so I think we were like the first sort of, what do you call it, merch stuff. This is like 1980.
Yeah.
You know, so it was really a great idea.
One of the things that I was thinking about too, when we were just talking about shows, and the show where you were spat on to the point that you were like Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, like dripping with fucking spit all over you, which just makes me fucking so mad, but also so sad for you. You were a young woman, you know? And I think about this young woman who ends up being a North Star for so many other musicians of all genders, taking that kind of crap. And part of my question that I was trying to get at with like, oh, how has what you feel like as a person on stage changed over the years? And I was hoping it wouldn't go here, but of course it did, because I have a similar thing, is that I had to keep my eye on the audience to make sure I was safe for a really, really long time. And it's only been in recent years that I've been able to lose myself. Have you ever lost yourself and felt like you were kind of almost communing with some otherworldly force on stage?
Yes, I think I try to get there every day, every time I'm on stage, because if I think at all, you know, it'll screw me up. Number one, I'll lose the feel because my brain is someplace else. You want to stay locked with the band. It's me as a rhythm guitar player. I think it's important too not to get lost. So I stay tight because that is important to me. But yeah, and forgetting the words, it's a horrible feeling to look up and go, oh my God, my head is empty. Usually you don't have to think about it, it just comes out. So I mean, I try to be 100% present and inside the words, try to, you know, conjure up those feelings that I was feeling, try to embody what you're singing about, you know?
Yeah, I mean, since I've recently been able to finally kind of reach that spot way more often than not, and like lose myself and just close my eyes and be with the music and have the muscle memory take over. I'm sure you've had this a zillion times where you're like, you know, have the flu or whatever, and you have to perform anyway. And you think you're going to go out there and it's going to be the worst show of your life.
It's the best show of your life.
It's the best
right?
show of your life.
Right.
It's like you're simultaneously missing in action. You have disappeared. Your ego's gone. You're one with the band and you're one with the crowd. And I feel like that kind of like non-sexual communion, though it is very sexy.
That was a really good description too, Kathleen. That was a really good description of the feelings and the intention of the connection of you, the crowd, and the oneness, and how it does carry you. I feel that 100%. And I've had those experiences too.
And it's better than any drug. It's like, it's one of the reasons I'm able to be sober, because I know I can get that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And acupuncture also, if I'm being real, because acupuncture to me feels like I'm getting really high. Yeah, I think that having those feelings on stage and I was in an audience recently. I really like this artist, Masterpiece, and I was at his show and I just completely lost myself. And it felt so good. And I was so with the crowd. And I was just like kind of standing there, like just dancing and having such a blast and being like, oh my God, this is why we fight. This is why we fight ICE. This is why we fight for our friends and our neighbors and ourselves. I think in desperate times, we cling to those so much tighter. And I think that's why performing live, and that's why I've been so happy to see how much you're performing live, because I know you're giving that experience to a lot of people. And it's so funny, we both started out as like fucking such scrubby ass punks. And now like people are writing their thesis papers on us. Like I'd recently read someone's thesis about me, you, and Patti Smith. And I was just like, yeah, I'm like, what?
Come a
But I
long
couldn't
way,
understand
huh?
half the words in it, you know? It's funny that you talk about, oh, I could have, I could have been an astronaut, or I could have been a forest ranger, which like I'm now creating a TV show called Joan Jett Forest Ranger. But it's funny you say that, because one of the things that I say about you when you're not around is I'm like, I have never in my life ever met someone who was literally born to rock except Joan. So, I mean, how did that happen? I feel like it was destiny, like some kind of like Superman shit where it was like, and Joan was born and then became, you know
Well,
what I
I'll
mean?
tell
Like,
you, my parents saying you could be anything you want to be in this world rings so loudly in my head, and I don't remember anything from when I was 5, except that, I think that triggered it because I always wanted to play music, even though I was interested in all these other areas. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I was born to do this too, to a degree, even, to the degree that you go down as just an example of what's possible.
I'm so glad that your parents told you you could do anything that you want. And I didn't have that, though you and I both had similar experiences with guitar teachers early on. You had a guitar teacher who wanted you to play folk music on an acoustic guitar and said girls don't play rock and roll. And I had just like little boys who laughed at me when I was trying to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. I turned to singing because I thought guitar was off limits. But did you learn to turn those obstacles into fuel?
100%. And, I was, I think, a lot more outwardly angry. I was quick to anger. Not always the smartest thing to do. And I learn as I get older to, pick my battles and hopefully know what I'm doing. But yes, all of that was fuel. The names people would call us, just saying you couldn't do it. Girls can't play rock and roll. I mean, all of it is just a joke on its face, because I'm in school next to girls playing Beethoven and Bach on violins and clarinets, and they're saying girls can't play rock and roll. No, what they mean is girls aren't allowed to play rock and roll socially, because rock and roll is sexual by its nature. Rock and roll means fucking. So I knew that that's what he meant. No, girls can't play electric guitar because it's sexual. It's will lead to things. And it's like, okay, I took the one lesson and left and never went back, and got to learn how to play guitar by myself book, and just played to my records. But all those kinds of things always turned it into, okay, I'll show you. And then you find other people who can relate, and you have people to fight with, whether it's your band or friends.
Me and you were both in some documentary a couple years ago, and I watched it, and you had the last word in the section of women in music or women in punk or whatever it was. They asked you, how has it changed for women in music? And like, I really want to ask Eddie Vedder, how has it changed for men in music? Because I don't fucking know. I'm not every woman. I mean, Shaka Khan is every woman, but I am not. And I can't possibly tell you how it's changed or not changed for other people. I think the thing you said that really struck me, because it was so honest and so the opposite, almost everything I see in these women in rock documentaries or books or whatever, was you were like, I'm really sick of people selling girls a bad bill of goods saying it's changed and everything's open now and it's fine. And then they get there and they realize that it hasn't, and that they're still being treated really, really badly. And I just want to say, if you're going to do this, it's a really hard life, and people are going to get really mad because women aren't supposed to be doing this job. And I just appreciated the honesty instead of the fairy tale-ness. And I think both things of like, you can do anything, but also just an FYI, the world's going to come at you. And both things are true. You can do anything, but I want to be honest with you. It's not going to be easy. It's more inspirational to me than go for it. Girls rule. But I wanted to take you back to a happy moment, hopefully,
Okay.
and ask you, what it felt like when in 2015 they called you and said you were going to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I thought it was amazing. I was always told myself, you may not ever get in this thing. But I really believe it was the year before that Nirvana got in. And they asked some people to sing some of their songs with them. And I got to do Smells Like Teen Spirit. And after it, Chris said something like, "Can you believe she's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?" And I think that's what did it. Nirvana calling them out on stage. So I think it lit a fire under them. And, but I was very honored.
Did you jump up and down?
It was pretty scary, it was kind of scary, just knowing you're going to be in front of all your various peers and, people that have been doing that for a long time. And it was interesting because one of the first records I bought as a kid was Paul McCartney's album that had Maybe I'm Amazed on it. I don't remember what it was called, but it was just his face on the cover. And so, just kind of ties things up because when I went out on stage to give my speech, the first people to stand up in the front row were Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr and started a standing ovation. I thought, wow, that's really a full circle kind of moment when I can picture myself sitting in my bedroom with my record player in my sister's bed over there, posters all over the wall, and listening to that. And here he is applauding for me getting in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It was just, any of those times you're going to really appreciate your accomplishments. That was one where I allowed myself to go, wow, look at this shit. This is pretty cool. What I wouldn't have done for so many of our departed stars that I looked up to would have been there, and it's just, I don't know, it's just really, it's great. It's great.
Yeah. I mean, if you would have told 9-year-old me that I would be interviewing you right now, I would have lost my mind. You know what I mean? Listening to you in the car and Casey Kasem top. Remember Casey Kasem? It was every Friday and Saturday. It was the top 100. And when your song would come on and just being so excited. And I mean, I actually was older than 9 because I'm really not that much younger than you. I'm 10 years younger than you, but you started so early. I know you put a lot of, you've given artifacts to the Rock Hall of Fame. Do you remember any of the ones that you've donated?
A guitar. I lent it to them because it's one that I still use. So I lent them one that kind of rotated. I think I've given them some sneakers, high top Pro Keds because they don't make Pro Keds anymore, and probably a jumpsuit.
Speaking of jumpsuits, I mentioned you in another episode of the podcast when I interviewed Amy from Amol and the Sniffers.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about stuff to go in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I was talking about, there was a couple times where I hung out with you for a couple days on tour. And somehow I got the job of putting your pantsuits into plastic bags at the end of the, because I'm like a dog who wants a job. You know what I mean? I want to run after a duck and bring it back in my mouth for you. I want to do something. So I was like, give me a job. I need something to do. I can't just be backstage hanging out. I don't know how to be an entourage person. I had to I was like, can I,
do something,
help with the meet and greet or, whatever. And so they're like, okay, you're in charge of Joan's pantsuit. So at the end of the night, I would get your teeny tiny wet pantsuit.
Wet, yeah.
Like her pantsuit, sopping wet. And wring it out very carefully so I didn't stretch it, and then fold it into tiny origami and then stick it in a sandwich bag.
That's so funny.
And it's actually one of my proudest moments. It's kind of, if I think about working at McDonald's or I worked on a boat where I served wine and I'm I think the Joan Jett pantsuit gig would probably be my favorite job. So,
that's so
thanks
funny.
For the gig. But I have so many other things to ask you, but I know that you're on a time constraint. Didn't get to talk to you about one of my favorite things that I saw that you did 100 years ago, which was one of those Battle of the Network Stars. Do you remember that?
Oh, I do. Yeah, people have been sending it around to me. So it must have just come out again or something because people have been sending it to me.
I'm so happy it's out in the world because I stayed at your house, couldn't sleep, and went into the living room and just started playing videotapes. And the one I played it said Battle of the Network Stars. And I used to love those when I was a kid. For those of you listening who don't know what that is, they would have people from different TV shows like Valerie Bertinelli and Christy McNichol, and they'd have musicians like LaToya Jackson, Joan Jett, and they would do these like athletic battles, like track battles, swimming battles, stuff like that. So I was like, oh, I'm going to check this out. So I put it in, and it's you creaming LaToya Jackson in the track event, creaming her. You're like, fastest woman on earth. Do you remember anything about that? Because I when I was watching it, there was this really awkward interview with Christy McNichol where she was like shaking. She was so excited to meet you. And you were kind of like, yeah, whatever. And she was like, Joan, how do you feel about winning the swim race or whatever?
I don't remember, heavy details at all, but I do remember meeting most of the people there. Everybody was very friendly. I know I felt like shit because I think I was hungover and, I was kind of mad at myself for not being in a little better shape to do that.
You were like the hungover whippersnappers at the battle.
It was funny.
One of those weird what the fuck celebrity moments, I have to say. And I've only had a couple. And some of them have been with you, actually. But I love talking to you. I love you so much, Joan. I'm so happy that we got to do this.
I love you too. Thank you so much for thinking of me and having me on this.
And that's it for this episode. Thank you so much to my guest, Joan Jett. For more about Music Makes Us, you can follow the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And subscribe to future windows on Substack for exclusive content. Music Makes Us is a production of Radiotopia and Talkhouse for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The production team includes Jocelyn Gonzalez and Morgan Flannery of PRX Productions, Shelby Morrison, Jenny Thomas, Melanie Wiggins, and Risa Gurkey, with special thanks to Dawn Waite, Sarah Deely, and Ben Adair. Yuri Lasorda is the showrunner, and Nick Dawson is our editor. Executive producers are Liz Peshkus, Ian Wheeler, Audrey Martovich, and Uli Boyka-Cohen. Publicity is led by J.R. Johnson, Sarah Avron, and David Catrone. And on the marketing team, Mike Russo, Maggie Gorville, and Carter Lou McElroy. We'll be back soon with more Music Makes Us. Tell all your friends and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.